Good Friday morning, everyone, and welcome into today's daily Bible reading for October the 18th. Today we are reading together Psalm 122. The 122nd Psalm has been given the title in my Bible, A Prayer for Jerusalem. It is, I believe it would be categorized as a Zion Psalm, which we've seen just a couple of those so far throughout our read. One that comes to mind, first of all, would be Psalm 48, which again just lauds Zion as the dwelling place of God. That's the main focus of this psalm today, Zion being Jerusalem, the dwelling place of God. We're going to talk about that today. One thing that I read in one of my books that go along with the reading and preparation is that there is a pattern that is formed throughout this section of the Psalter, Psalms 120 through 134, which are the songs of ascents. Again, we talked about the fact that there are different ways to look at these psalms. Some say that these are psalms of spiritual ascent. Some say these are psalms of musical ascent. And then there are some who think of these as psalms of a journey ascent, meaning making your way from wherever you are up to Jerusalem for worship. I do think that fits best here within the context of the majority of these psalms. And this resource also noted that there seems to be five sets of three psalms, and then it follows for the most part. I think there are a couple of exceptions as I was looking through the psalms, but it follows a pretty decent pattern of there being a lament of sorts, and then a psalm of confidence in God, and then finally a psalm where Zion is the focus. So you can almost imagine this as the people setting off on the journey, and the journey looks really long and difficult and dangerous. But then during the journey, there's confidence that is instilled by God, from the author in God, because of who God is. And then finally, you can see Zion in the distance, and there's this hopeful shout for Zion. There's this lauding of Zion as the journeyer is approaching the city of God. You see that again as I just skim through these psalms, or look at what we've already done, and then skim through the psalms ahead. That does seem to follow pretty well, at the very least in the first six psalms. I believe these first two sets of three, it certainly follows this pattern. And I think it probably, I think the one where the psalm kind of broke down a little bit. So the first three, I think the fourth cycle maybe breaks down a little bit because the third psalm of that one does not have a strong Zionistic type of theme. But certainly in the first three, so the first nine psalms, you have these three sets of three where there is difficulty followed by faith and trust and confidence in God, and then Zion in the distance, and being joyful as you approach the city of God. So that's just something interesting again to note as we look at the Psalter, again recognizing that these psalms weren't just thrown down on some scroll in random order. There was thought, there was consideration, there was evaluation with the Psalms, and often there is a pattern that you can find in the way that they were organized. With all that said, let me get Psalm 122 up on the screen, and we'll read together here this Zion Psalm, a prayer for Jerusalem. We're told this is a song of ascents. This is a psalm of David, or a song of David. And some speculate that maybe 2 Samuel chapter 6, whenever David is bringing the ark of God to Jerusalem, that is the occasion for the writing of the psalm. Certainly that is a possibility. Let's read here Psalm 122 and verse number 1. David writes, I rejoiced with those who said to me, let's go to the house of Yahweh. Our feet were standing within your gates, Jerusalem. Jerusalem built as a city should be, a solidly united, where the tribes, Yahweh's tribes, go up to give thanks to the name of Yahweh. This is an ordinance for Israel. There thrones for judgment are placed, thrones of the house of David. Pray for the well-being of Jerusalem. May those who love you be secure. May there be peace within your walls, security within your fortresses. Because of my brothers and friends, I will say, peace be in you, or may peace be in you. Because of the house of Yahweh our God, I will pursue your prosperity. Psalm number 122. Again, a Psalm of Zion, reminiscing on the beautiful nature of God's city. You can again see those that are looking back on the journey to Jerusalem. Somebody said, "Hey, let's go to Jerusalem. Let's go to God's city." And the author David here saying, "Yes, yes, let us go. I'm happy that we get to go to God's city." And then they look and they recognize before they know it, oh, we are standing here within the gate. So what is so good about being in God's city of Jerusalem? Well, we recognize the marvelous nature of God's city, that it is built as a city should be, the text tells us, solidly united. The translation in different psalms renders this different ways, but I think the idea here certainly is the fact that Zion is finely tuned and functioning as a proper city should be. And why? Well, because God's blessings are upon it. And this is the place where God's people, God's tribes. One writer talked about how Jerusalem didn't really belong to any particular tribe, and I should have gone back and looked to see whether or not there's anything more to that than what the author said. But if that is the case, then you could almost imagine Jerusalem being like Washington, D.C., which does not have any, that which does not belong to any particular state. It is an entity all unto itself. But here we recognize that no single tribe can claim Jerusalem as its own. That all the people of God, all the tribes of Israel can come into this city and give thanks there to the name of Yahweh, which of course this was a command that they were to do. They were to come into the city throughout the year for various celebrations and festivals in order to give worship and sacrifices to God. And here Jerusalem's so important as well because it's where the thrones for judgment are placed, the thrones of the house of David. This is the spiritual, the political city, or excuse me, the spiritual and political center of Israel. Jerusalem, the most important city within all the land of Israel. So it makes sense then that the author here, David, would say that there needs to be prayer for the well-being of Jerusalem because of its importance, because it is the center of Jewish life, because there is the special presence of God that dwelt among this city. Again, as David's writing this, the temple is not yet built, but the tabernacle would be there. The sanctuary would be there. So, of course, that's why it can be referred to earlier as the house of God. So may those who love you be secure in your city, God, because if Jerusalem is healthy, then you can not guarantee, but you can suspect then that the rest of Israel would be healthy in some sense. And maybe conversely, that would be even more true, that if Jerusalem, if this all important city was unhealthy, then you can expect the rest of Israel to be the same. So therefore, pray for the well-being of Jerusalem, and pray that those who love you may be secure there within your walls, that they might find security within your fortress. Again, healthy Jerusalem, healthy Israel. So because of my brothers and friends, I will say, may peace be in you. That's in reference to Jerusalem, I believe. Because of the house of Yahweh our God, I will pursue your prosperity. So David is saying, I will pursue the prosperity of Jerusalem, because it is God's city. In fact, it was also referred to as the city of David. Again, so many important things going on there within Jerusalem. So David here, as he approaches, possibly with the ark from the story of 2 Samuel 7, he sees Jerusalem and he praises the great presence that was soon to dwell there, and is thankful for the role that God has placed for Jerusalem to play within the history of God's people as they dwelt within the land. So, of course, for us, we're thinking about this psalm. We're thinking, okay, well, how can we apply this to us, or what should we think? How can we meditate upon the psalm a little further? And of course, for us, we recognize that no longer is there a single location where God's special presence dwells, but in fact, where all of God's people are, we can recognize that God's presence is there through His Spirit. So whenever we're thinking about praying for the well-being of Jerusalem, we're not thinking about praying just for a singular location, but we can be praying for the health and the prosperity of God's people wherever they might be. I think about what is said in Hebrews chapter 12, and about this great. Again, the idea here is the Mount Zion, the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem, is what we consider in Hebrews 13 and verse number 18. For you have not come to what could be touched, to a blazing fire, to darkness, gloom, and storm. I think a reference here to Mount Sinai, what happened there in the book of Exodus, to the blast of a trumpet and the sounds of words. Those who heard it begged for that another word not be spoken to them, for they could not bear what was commanded. If even an animal touches the mountain, it must be stoned. The appearance was so terrifying that Moses said, I am trembling with fear. Instead, you have come to Mount Zion. The same language from Psalm 122. The Hebrew writer is saying that Christians have come to Mount Zion, to the city of the living God, in parentheses, the heavenly Jerusalem, to myriads of angels, a festive gathering, to the assembly of the firstborn whose names have been written in heaven, to a judge who is God of all, to the spirits of righteous people made perfect, and to Jesus, the mediator of a new covenant, and to the sprinkled blood, which says better things than the blood of Abel. So that's what we belong to. We belong to this heavenly Jerusalem, this heavenly Mount Zion, and we should pray for the prosperity of God's people wherever they might be, and recognize that any person who is willing to come and to submit fealty to Jesus, who is willing to come and put full confidence and trust in Jesus, one who is willing to come and repent and surrender to him as king, they too can find safety and security in the heavenly Jerusalem. And what a blessing that is for us to be able to recognize how good it is that we too can be a part of the house of the Lord. If you have any questions or comments about Psalm 122, please feel free to leave that in the comment section below. And I appreciate you taking some time reading along with me on this Wednesday. We will be next together on Sunday morning for our Bible studies at 10 a.m. Again, as I mentioned, we're going to be talking about Christians and the government and voting and kind of some principles and thoughts that should guide us in our approach to those things. And then on Sunday at 11 a.m. in our worship assembly, we're going to continue our study through the Gospel of Mark. We're going to be looking at chapter 14 and verses 27 through 52, which is going to talk about Peter's denial of forsaking Jesus. So we're going to talk about or read about and study the prayer that Jesus offers in the garden. And then lastly, his betrayal at the hands of Judas. So very much looking forward to continuing our study in Mark's gospel. And then, of course, on Monday, we will continue reading in the Psalter. We'll be in Psalm 123. Again, thanks so much for tuning in today. Hope everybody has a great weekend. Look forward to seeing everybody on Sunday and being together for our reading here, at least online, on Monday. Take care and God bless.